Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the book Empire of Illusion by Hedges. I've done a review of one of his books before, I Don't Believe in Atheists, and it was a really good book, and I guess even though I didn't agree with some of the things in it, overall I found it very informative, and I guess I should have taken that as a sign that I should read more of his books, but I really haven't until now. But the other day, after watching some of his lectures on YouTube about his books, I went to the library and decided to check out some of his books, and Empire of Illusion was the first one that I finished. I'm still working on the other two. At any rate, it was a really good book, but it was very, very depressing. It does a really good job, I think, of cataloging the failures of capitalism and a lot of the negative effects that economic system has had on our society, and how the corporatization of America has degraded us intellectually, has degraded us morally, when it comes to things like pornography, and the second chapter of this book is all about pornography, and it is difficult to read if you are at all, as I am, a sensitive person. It's tough to read about what a lot of particularly women in porn, a lot of the things that they get put through in terms of physical abuse and psychological abuse too, but it's difficult to read. But I think, and he sort of makes this point in the book, and I would agree that I think it's a symptom of the way that capitalism commodifies everything, even human beings. And when you just think of yourself as a thing, or other people as things, then I think it naturally leads to disrespect and just a cheapening of things that shouldn't be cheapened. I'm not a total prude, but I am disturbed by a lot of the trends in pornography and a lot of things that he talks about in the book. I think really spoke to me in that sense. He points out that in our rush to defend, I guess, free speech, that in some cases we might be defending things that are pretty indefensible. Other things that he talks about in the book, he talks about our media and the corporatization of our media. He points out that almost 100% of the movies and TV shows that get produced, the books that get produced, they come from a very small number of corporations that don't really have our best interests in mind. They're just catering to the lowest common denominator. They're not trying to educate us or inform us or anything like that, but really that our media is meant to distract us from the fact that our standard of living is declining, our infrastructure is degrading. Over 50% of our discretionary government budget is used for support of the military-industrial complex, and our media basically allows our politicians to lie with impunity when it comes to creating justifications for more weapons to be built and more wars to be fought. And we're not being encouraged to question, or even in some cases not, we're criticized for questioning. It's depressing. It's definitely depressing. And he talks in the book about how the corporatization of our educational system has damaged us. We're not really encouraging people to think critically anymore, and I agree with him that is definitely a net loss to society. It may be good for our corporate masters to keep us unquestioning drones, but it's not good for society as a whole, and it's certainly not going to help us solve any of the problems that we're faced with. By just kowtowing to the same authorities that got us in this mess to begin with. That's, pretty much a given. But another thing he talks about in the book is how capitalism and the commodification of human beings, how it leads to depression, and he talks about how a lot of solutions in our culture seem to be geared toward lying to ourselves as a way of making ourselves happier, or taking antidepressants as a way of making ourselves happier. When if we really wanted to become happier in the long term, then we would face our problems honestly and realize that the economic system that we're in is geared to enrich capitalists and the people at the very top, the people that own the means of production, not meant to benefit society as a whole. And certainly our living standards have been static or declining for the last 40 years. I wish he talked more in the book about where our products come from and the moral problems with the fact that we benefit from what is essentially slave labor in many other parts of the world, or near slave labor, people being paid literally starvation wages to make a lot of the consumer goods that we take for granted. And on a personal note, when it comes to capitalism as a cause of mental illness, my mother is a severe paranoid schizophrenic, and I do believe the culture has damaged my mother. Not to say that she wouldn't have had problems anyway, but the fact that she is severely in debt and does base a lot of her feelings of self-worth around what she can afford to buy. I do think a lot of other people do that, and it obviously is a very destructive road to go down, to try to find meaning where there is no meaning. There's just mindless consumption and exploitation. Anyway, basically Chris Hedges is a socialist, and he makes many very, very cogent, good arguments in the book against capitalism, and demonstrates how capitalism has degraded our society morally, and it's not that I hadn't really, I guess, thought about those issues before, but it really brought everything together for me. The last chapter of the book, he talks about, trying to bring America back to the ideals that we espouse, freedom and equality, and treating people with respect. I think, unfortunately, there's, in our corporate culture and our governance, there's definitely not enough respect for people. So anyway, it was a good book, and I highly recommend it. Thank you for watching my video.